Show. My co-host is Brian Chericello. Today with us we have a District 19 Senate candidate, Regina Birdsell. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Regina.
Thank you.
Regina, Jim and I had the pleasure of working with you at the State House for the last, I believe, 4 years.
Yep, 2010.
And so we know a little bit about you, but why don't you take a minute and explain to the audience a little bit of background about yourself?
Okay. I am a state rep in Hampstead and Kingston for the past 4 years. Prior to that, I was in the United States Coast Guard for 10 years, worked for Raytheon. I am a recruiter by trade and had moved to Hampstead a while ago, I'd say, in 1996. And over the time, I got very interested in politics, and so I started getting a little bit more knowledgeable about some of the things that were going on in the state. And I started helping on some special election campaigns. Then I started, I joined Vesta Roy series program where I got some training on how to run or how to help candidates. Then I decided to go ahead and run for office and got in. And then I ran for the Rockingham Republican chair, and I won that. So I've been working that for almost 18 months. So.
Wow, that's great.
Pretty active.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as you know, and we know, we pretty much started in the House the same time, and we're still in the House, and big difference this term to last term.
Yes, it was. Yes, it is.
And as you know, we've have lots of challenges still ahead of us in the legislature. What would be something that you want to tell the voters or the audience on the things that you plan to do when you get in, if you get in as senator for this district?
Well, a couple of the things that I'm working on right now, I'm doing a lot of door-to-doors, and especially in Derry, and the biggest issue I'm finding is the property taxes, which we all know. I mean, every town, Hampstead, Windham, and Derry have property taxes, but Derry is really the highest, and that's one of the things that I'm going to try and help bring down, predominantly by looking at some of the economic development. I'm doing a lot of looking into Windham's. They have a great economic development staff, and I'm working with a little bit with Laura Scott on that and learning what they're doing. And in turn, I want to bring some of that knowledge to Derry, and your downtown business really needs to be developed pretty much. So I think that's the first thing I want to do, is look at some of the economic development plans that your organization or Derry has. And with that, if you can get more business in, you broaden the tax base, therefore, and the only people that can really, I think, reduce the taxes is your town council or the selectmen. So you have to work very closely with them to try any money that we can get from the state to bring down to the town to help reduce taxes. We have to encourage those selectmen or those councilors to put it towards reduction of the.
Right. Let's talk about. It's interesting. I think we all want to get the taxes down in Derry. One of the major or quickest ways to do that would be expanded gambling, if that so happened to go into a neighboring town. What are your feelings about some of the bills that we had in the last term that we voted? Are you for gambling at all?
I voted for it.
Yeah.
The bill in 2013 I did not vote for because it didn't have any of the regulations I think that needed to be put in.
Right.
I did vote for the one this year, and a lot of the regulations were put into place, so I felt comfortable voting for that, and I voted for it in the past. And so I intend to continue voting as long as it's the right bill. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've started putting together, I know that we want to, in the bill, we want to make sure that there's revenue sharing, so that goes out to the towns.
Right.
So that, again, you can talk to the councilors and have them, try and have them put that towards the reduction. And the other thing I'd like to do, I found that gambling, I've done a bit of looking into some of the surveys and some of the studies that they've been doing in Delaware. especially in Delaware, where they were very similar to us. They were a small state. They were one of the first ones to get gambling in. They did very well in the beginning, and now it's getting to the point, because of all the larger states around them,
Right.
it's taken the revenue away from them to the point where the state has to actually subsidize. So my feeling is it's an unstable source of revenue. So what I'd like to do is use all of the, not all of the money, put out the revenue sharing for the towns, and then whatever state revenues received, put that towards special projects. So it doesn't impact our state budget, and we're not scrambling because HHS doesn't have enough money, or safety doesn't have enough money. But put that towards transportation, special projects. So we have, at least in the beginning, we can get a lot of the red listed bridges fixed. We can get a lot of the projects done.
Yeah.
I'd like to step in on that one when you said that, you know, in the beginning, this other Delaware is now putting money. I think New Hampshire would be totally different from that, because we don't have any large anything around us.
Right.
People come to New Hampshire, they're going to come for our foliage, they're going to come for Motorcycle Week, they're going to come up here just for, have you ever been on 93 heading north on a Friday or heading
Yes,
south on a Sunday?
commute.
So people are going to come to New Hampshire anyway. And my attitude is if they're going to come anyway, we might as well collect the revenue. And I believe they would come, and they would come, and they would go to the casinos while they're here anyway.
Well,
So,
I agree, and I'm not saying that we would subsidize. I don't think, I would never vote to subsidize. But as long as they're making money, then let's put that money towards reduction, or sending money to the towns, and then a reduction, or putting it towards projects, so that we're not worried about a gas tax increase.
well, the original bill in 2013 was designated a huge portion that was going to go to 93 expansion, which might have eliminated the gas tax
Right.
had we actually passed the gambling then. And a lot of people, I hear that is number one. By the way, this is one of the #1 issues that the people of Derry are telling me is, why didn't you pass gambling? That's what they ask me. And I said, I voted for it. Every time it came up in any form, shape, or matter, I voted for it.
Right.
So, because I believe it's a non-tax revenue.
I agree. Now, again, in 2013, I didn't, because it didn't have the rules and regulations. And my fear is, if you pass something with no rules, because John Lynch had put in a commission to study the rules, and it wasn't quite done yet.
Right.
Had they waited and put that bill in and put one in very similar to the one we just voted on, I think obviously I would have voted for it.
Right.
But, and I think now any bill that comes forward is going to have those rules and regulations put in place, because you just can't do something like this and not have rules.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I understand, and I know there was a lot of delay. There was a lot of stuff in there to delay the first bill because they didn't have the rules.
Right.
Right.
You know,
That was one of many different issues.
Yeah.
Why it didn't pass the first time around.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 93, because you had mentioned economic development would benefit the region, particularly the Derry and Hampstead and Wyndham
Right.
area. First off, how did you vote on the gas tax?
I voted against it.
Okay. And the biggest question, it's a big political football here in Derry. Is,
4A.
you got it.
I watched the town council meeting
yes,
yesterday.
but I think it's important because I don't know if you know how much of that 4A program would benefit the region, particularly Londonderry and Derry as a region. The developers want to spend about $1 billion, basically, which would
Right.
create a lot of jobs. Do you think that you will you keep an open mind with that program, or what's your feelings about it?
I will certainly keep an open mind. I've listened to both sides. I have concerns on both sides. I'd like to see the information that says it's going to help the downtown area by taking traffic away from it. Now, granted, I've been in downtown Derry when traffic is really bad, and it's really bad.
Right.
But I'd like to see the studies that say, you know, it's going to help the businesses. But I also am concerned that there's, I think, a $23 million shortfall that they say the feds are going to come in.
I think
Right.
it's up around 50 million from
Well,
what I
that's-
Well,
understand.
no, if you,
That's the total project. 50.
total, 52.8, I think is what they quoted.
Right.
And then there's what, 30 million, I think the state is paying for.
Right. That's part of the 4A and the gas tax money.
And then the 10 million, 5 in each town.
Right.
And I think that brings it down to 20. That's still, we have no idea.
Right.
And they say the feds are going to come in and pay that. I want proof, because I do not want the dairy taxpayers to be paying for $20 million worth of transportation, or in transportation that's going to be taking people away from the town.
Right. And I think that everyone's going to agree with you on that particular point. I'm not sure. I thought you had mentioned you saw there was a meeting in Derry a couple weeks ago where DOT came in.
That was last week, yeah.
And DOT said, give us the ball, give us the lead, and we will look for federal money. So to me, I think that kind of takes the town council off the hook by saying, we'll find the money. If we don't find it, then the current town council can't say that they killed the project. For me, it's kind of a no-brainer.
But my concern is what happens if I just watched on Channel 9, WMUR.
Yeah.
They were talking about, and the state transportation group said they're running out of money.
Right.
And they expect to have a short-term bill and a long-term bill. And I hope they're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have questions about that. So I agree it would let the town council off, but I want to show me the money.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically.
Well, I agree with you there, and I'll say, like, for instance, that's why I got up and spoke against that bill that they wanted to put a bus service to Claremont. And this is the Department of Transportation. If they got all this extra money, they shouldn't be raising the gas tax. They shouldn't be doing this, and so forth. And we heard all about it, the reasons why they need it. Well, it really we don't need a bus service. Derry, I'd love to have a bus service to Manchester or to Nashua or maybe to Salem or maybe over to Merrimack, whatever. But it's not going to happen because we don't. That's the way New Hampshire is set up. We're a rural community and we use our automobiles. And with that in mind, I'm going to talk about 4A in downtown. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people in town that say our town will never come back because of the fact we're not a Rockport, we're not a Newburyport. We don't have that for somebody to come downtown. I mean, you may be able to bring a few businesses here and there and get rid of the congestion and even have parking, but we're not going to bring that huge amount of business in downtown.
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of towns that are in the middle of the state that renew themselves. I mean, you look at Concord, Mass, they've completely renewed themselves. Nice. And Derry has a lot of good history in here. So why not capitalize on the good things that we have, or that you have? Mm-hmm. And, you know, part of that is getting a town manager that is good, and then they bring on a good economic development person, and start working with the advantages that Derry has. Because, I mean, you are in a really good spot. You're right off of 93. There's a lot of pluses that Derry has.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about one of the big issues at the State House this year was expanding Medicaid and the battle that we had there. I want to get your thoughts on that. We know the feds said that they'd pay the first 3 years at 100%. But then they're going to knock it down to 90. So where does the state get the money after year 3? I
don't. And frankly, my understanding, Paul Ryan, when he came to do a fundraiser for Frank Gintis, said Democrats and Republicans are saying the money is not going to be there even for 3 years. So we're looking at a shortfall. And I don't know where I read it, but somewhere I read recently that we were estimated 3,600 people were going to be on the rolls. We are now up to 11,000.
Wow.
And
so
wasn't there a ruling that just came out this week or something that, or something from another state that the states can't administer the the federal program?
Subsidies.
That's the state exchange
The
issue.
state exchanges can't get the subsidies, and we did vote for the state subsidy.
Right. We set up a state
no,
exchange, right,
Yes,
this year?
we set up a state exchange.
Right.
We went against the feds.
Right, but the Medicaid issue, going back to that, what we just talked about, there's going to be pressure on this state to raise that difference, even though it's 10% difference. You know, they said 90% in year 3. Well, we don't know in year 8, is it going to be 80, 70%? And then the state's got to come up with that money.
Well, also remember, if the feds don't come in with the money, there is a sunset clause in that.
That's right.
So that program will die. Well, I mean, I would, but what legislator is going to sit, because you know someone's going to put in a bill to continue it.
Right.
Do we have the strength to vote against something like that? I do, but I don't know if a lot of people will.
Good point.
So my concern is we're going to be hit with it much before. And I think what I heard on GIR this morning is we are actually now, we have a $40 million hole because of Medicaid expansion.
Wow.
Right, and that eventually will pass down to people on taxes.
Exactly.
Because it has to be made up somewhere.
Exactly.
And well, maybe it won't be taxes. Maybe they'll call it fees.
Well, and the problem is every source of revenue that we have wanted, like the gambling, has been voted down. And if it wasn't for the Portsmouth group, we would probably have gambling. Now, that might be a good reason why I could try and lobby with the Portsmouth, because they have a lot of red-listed bridges over there.
Right.
And if you get some of that money from the gambling to fix their red-listed bridges, that might flip their minds.
Right.
Well, they just got that Sarah Long
Bridge
which
is
was
the big bridge.
$130 million.
Right.
They're getting that fixed. That's all done.
Yeah.
So that's
They
another
have a few
big one.
more over there.
But that bridge had to get done because
Yeah.
you've got the Navy over there, and that's
That was
that's
an
big for economic development.
bridge.
I know.
I agree. We had a show on that, so
Yeah.
you can watch it on YouTube if you'd like.
I will.
But let's go into another revenue source, marijuana. That's a big one that we heard in the last year.
Yep.
Actually, I think we heard it both years.
Yep.
This year it almost passed.
It did. It passed the policy and it failed in the Ways and Means, coming back from the Ways and Means. And I did vote against it, but I've thought about it, and I would look at decrim.
Well, I think we already did that for an ounce or less, right? Did we do that?
I
believe we did that the first year
yeah, it could have been maybe.
of our 4 years that we've been there.
Yeah, we did the medical marijuana.
We
did the medical marijuana.
Right, which, by the way, we're still looking for regulation. They're still working on the regulations. And how long has it been?
Well, that
2
was
years?
the sunset. That had a while. It put it off to give you time to do that.
Well, yeah, but my sense is if we're gonna legalize pot, how long is it going to be before we actually start seeing revenues from it?
Well, Colorado is doing great, and the way I look at it is if we can, first of all, you look at alcohol and you look at marijuana. To me, they're kind of the same. Maybe one's considered a drug, but alcohol's a drug too. Nobody thinks of alcohol as a drug.
Oh, yeah.
We sell alcohol on our state highways. So,
is there a way now? The one concern that I had heard from the well on pot is there a way to test on the spot whether someone's under the influence?
And I don't know that answer. I would doubt at this point there is a test,
I
but I
believe
think that
there is.
there will be.
I believe there is right now. There is some sort of test they can do from saliva or whatever.
Someone had told me that they actually have to take them to a place to get the blood work.
Yeah.
Or the urine test would tell them too, as long as they don't have access to other means. But and then is it today's or was it last week's? Who knows? But
Right.
I agree that problem with the drunk driving issue or the pot driving issue. But also, I know there was some studies done where they put professional race car drivers and they let them smoke pot and drive, and then they let them drink and drive. and they did much better when they smoked pot than they did when they were driving
They just were
drunk.
just going a little slower.
They all went slower.
Right,
Slows
that's a
time
little
down.
bit, okay. So,
Yes.
Regina, what if you get elected? What committee would you like to serve on in the Senate?
Transportation and Commerce,
Okay, and then what did you do in the House?
election law.
Okay, excellent.
Yep. I was part of the New Hampshire Business Coalition,
Yep.
evaluating some of the business bills.
Oh, good.
Worked with Lori Sanborn on some of those.
Yep. Now, transportation, I'm on transportation in the House. We had a big bill that came up, kind of controversial, is the,
Gas tax?
not the gas tax, that one was big.
Those too.
This one kind of flew under the radar, and it's the cell phone bill that
Yeah.
will be coming up in 2015.
Yep.
It's probably going to be the strictest in the country. It doesn't allow police or firemen to use a cell phone, including at a stoplight. You're not allowed to hold a
Or
handheld.
touch a cell phone, period.
Well, now, one of the regulations too was it was also included Garmin's and TomToms.
Yes.
And I use my cell phone for my GPS, so
too.
you can't use it for that.
No.
Okay.
So it had to be an integrated type of. I mean, you see the newer cars have this stuff built into it.
And I got to tell you, my husband has one, and it's not very good.
Oh.
I have
agree.
one,
It's horrible.
and I won't mention the manufacturer, but it begins with an F, and it doesn't work.
And it gets a great
And it's
F.
made by Microsoft, by the way, and that's why it probably doesn't work. But
Oh,
needless to say, it has never worked from day one.
Oh, great.
So I mean, going into the Senate will be a lot different from the House, as you,
Yes.
I'm sure you well know. I mean, you'd probably be there. You'd probably be living up there.
That's what I've heard. And I sat down with Senator Morse before I made the decision to run.
Yeah.
And he had mentioned, he told me this is not a two-day week job. It's, 5 days a week, and, not including some of the stuff that you have to do in district, which I do anyway.
Yeah.
At least on the state rep side, I attend the selectmen's meetings. I attend I do my TV show. I do my newsletter. I try and get the word out to my constituents, and I will continue to do that.
Yeah.
But I talked to Senator Morse, and he had advised me that it is not a two-day a week job.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I might as well ask this because I'm going to ask everybody that's running for this position. Another controversial bill that we heard the first session, and we heard it briefly this session, but I don't think it went anywhere real quick, was the right to work. What do you? How would you vote on the right to work, and what do you think of the right to work?
I have voted for right to work in the past, mostly because I think it's a choice issue, because the right to work bills we've had have specifically doesn't require you to join. So you have a choice of whether you want to or not. And I think that's important, that people get a choice. And I do think it's one of the things that we have two issues in New Hampshire in bringing businesses in. One is the right to work. The other one is the cost of electricity.
Yeah.
In this state. But I have a record of supporting right to work.
Now, with right to work, I mean, they call it right to work, but there's many that say that it actually would bring in low-paying jobs, and most of the studies prove that it probably wouldn't bring in high-paying jobs. And I would tend to say that, that union, I'm being in a union, which is myself, I'm in the Teamsters, and I would say that you are not forced to join. If you don't want to make $21 an hour, you can work at Walmart for $7 an hour. I don't consider that being forced to take extra money.
No, but when you say, let's say we got a Caterpillar in manufacturing, you're bringing in not only some of the manufacturing jobs, which are a little bit lower paying, because I worked in Raytheon. It's a manufacturing facility. And we had unions there, but we also had non-exempt salaried people who made, anywhere from $7.25 to, I think at one point I was making $15 an hour. But then you also bring in the management people, employees. So you are bringing in some high-level paying jobs. And hopefully in every manufacturing you have some of the lower paying jobs, which you bring in the people who are just starting out in their careers, and then they work themselves up. And as far as what you said about going to Walmart, well, yeah, they can go to Walmart for $8.25 or whatever Walmart is paying at this point. But why couldn't someone go to Raytheon, let's say, if they had a facility up here, and do the same job?
Well, I personally believe that the government should not tell private business how to run their business. And when you come out and say the right to work, like Anheuser-Busch is where I work, they've had a standing relationship with the Teamsters for the last over 123 years. And the contracts are usually, there's only been one strike in that entire time, and that was back in the 80s when the son took over the company. And it's a good working relationship. There are pros to unions versus cons, is that everything is in that book. So if there's a problem, look it up. Look at the book, okay? Page 57 says you can't do that. Right. Problem solved. Easy for the company. The company likes that. So I don't think that the government should be telling companies you have to have the right to work, or you, whatever they do. And then I believe that the right to work would actually hurt the state of New Hampshire, because we do have a very high cost of living here, and we need to get high quality jobs, not low quality jobs.
Well, my feeling about that is I don't have any trouble with unions. If a company wants a private union, or if the unions are private, and they can market themselves to the employees and say, this is what we can do for you, and the employees join, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Let's move on to a different subject. I mean, the second tier to that would be the energy costs. So we all know in the Northeast our energy costs are outrageous.
Yeah, and
you know, and we've been, the last couple of years we've been hearing a little bit about Northern Pass.
Oh yes.
So I want to get your thoughts about Northern Pass. You know, some people say that they're holding out so New Hampshire would get a reduced rate if they allowed lines to go through, or the other issue is burying the lines. So I wanted to get your opinion about that.
Well, I'll tell you.
Don't hold back.
I've always voted against it because, from my feeling is, I take because it doesn't really affect us as much in the southern tier, but it's going to affect the people in the north, and I take my cue from the people in the north. And when I was doing some door-to-doors last weekend, and one of the gentlemen asked me exactly that. Yeah. What do you think of the Northern Pass? I said, well, again, I take my cue from the people in the north, and they don't want it. He said, you're right, we don't. He owns property up there.
Right.
I'm okay with them burying the lines, but the problem with the Northern Pass is we don't get any benefit from it.
I actually went to one of the meetings with the Northern Quebec, whoever they put it, Quebec. They had the energy company up there, and they had put on a thing for the legislators to explain it a little bit. And I says, okay. I asked one question: how much can I tell my constituents Northern Pass is going to save them? And the person that was running this meeting says that they would probably save about $12 a year. So about $1 a month off their electric bill because of Northern Pass. And I said, well, how do I justify voting for Northern Pass when it costs you $32 to buy an LED light bulb?
Well, exactly.
I mean, the point for me would be a regional view. When I mean regional, I'm talking about Maine, Vermont, upstate New York, Pennsylvania. The energy pools that people pull from are dwindling. Now we're fortunate in New Hampshire because we only use 60% of what we produce.
No, we only use 35%.
35%, but we put into the pool.
Right.
But now they're forcing PSNH to sell their assets, and there may come a time where we have rolling brownouts like California did years ago. So if economic development is a driving force, and we're looking at energy issues, we could have a problem.
Right.
So, and maybe the answer is burying the lines. But I think we have to think regionally.
Well, and I agree. We have to think regionally, but you also have to look at part of the reason why our costs are going up and up and up is they're closing a lot of the coal plants.
And that's a federal issue because of the regulations from the federal government.
Exactly, and that's we have to try and work that angle. But again, we're not getting a whole lot of benefit from the Northern Pass, as far as I can see. A lot of it is going straight down to Massachusetts.
Yeah. But again, coming into time, as time goes on and populations grow,
Right.
there'll be a time where we'll have to buy from the pool. That's
Well, we
the
are
key.
buying from the pool now. We're
Well,
putting into the pool at one rate, and then we're buying it at
Well,
like triple the
only,
cost
only
back.
when it's hot like today or it's really cold. That's when we're buying from the pool. Actually, the PSNH said that they're actually firing their plants before they even buy the pool. So they've got a
They have some fast firing plants
Right,
now,
right.
which will eliminate us from buying from the pool.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
on these peak demand days like today, probably because it's very hot out there.
Yeah. All right. What's another issue that we talked about?
Let's see. We touched base on the marijuana, and
The state exchanges.
yeah.
We only have one company, Anthem.
Okay, medical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Parkland is out, and that is I love Parkland because my husband had his cancer surgery there, and they do amazing. I've heard a lot of complaints about Parkland, but they do amazing cancer work there, as far as I'm concerned. And when they pulled that out, it's ridiculous.
Right.
And the fact that so many people have to drive an hour to their doctors, and that kind of dovetails on the VA too, because being a veteran, I refuse to go to the VA. I can if I want to, and thank God I have my husband's coverage, because if I didn't, and I'm afraid that come October, November timeframe, when they start pulling the company medical
Right.
away from the spouses, I may wind up at the VA. So, but with the medical exchanges, you've got people having half of the hospitals are being taken out,
Right.
and I understand that there are more
Plans in the works.
plans in the works to have other insurance companies come in. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not fast enough, and it was just a ridiculous. A lot of that stems way back from when Jeanne Shaheen was governor, and I don't understand why we've never repealed that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I want to look into.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, also being in the Senate would be so much different than the House. In the House, we can have 2-hour debates over things that are on the consent calendar that I happen to pull off because I noticed it, nobody else did, and we
Right.
actually won a few of those.
Yeah, you did.
Because I actually noticed them. They would have been passed and we wouldn't have known.
Yeah, you did good on that one.
The seatbelt one
Yep.
was one of them, and then there was another the light one.
Yep.
The light one,
Yeah.
mandatory headlights, which we already have on the statute, by the way. But so
Well,
was
there's a lot of things that they still have on the statute, like that. The pay equity. And I don't understand why the Senate even, well, I guess each house put together a bill. But from a HR standpoint, women are one of the toughest negotiators for the salary. And what the pay equity does is give another avenue of legal action towards
Right.
small businesses, which I find horrendous, and I'm surprised that the Senate.
Well, we've seen a flood of special, creating special class bills
Yeah,
this last
I saw.
session.
Yeah, you're right.
Which I was amazed at, that they were creating all these special classes, one being people who rent apartments or something, and then the sex offender one that passed the House, but I tried, but I didn't win on that one. But the one that passed the House and then ended up going to a study committee in the Senate, so
Yep.
that was good that didn't pass. But
Right.
there was quite a few special
Special interest groups that they've started. And once they left the House, I really didn't follow them, and I think the Senate might have actually. I think a couple of them actually came from the Senate, but I didn't really follow them. But those are some of the things that we need to look into. And one of the things that I've also thought about, because we've always talked about starting to pull regulations off of small businesses. One of the things that I'd like to do, when I talked to one of the small businesses here in Derry, they said it took them, they started their business about a year ago. And when they were in the process of it, there's no place to go to say, okay, I want food retail. What do I need to do? And so I want to put together a checkoff list of everything that someone who wants to start, let's say a pet store or food business, service business, a checkoff list, and work with DRED on that so that people can have a list. And once we find out everything that they have to go to, then we can start looking at all the rules and regulations and start pulling some of them out.
So like a one-stop shop where people can actually, they know what's in front of them and they know what to do instead of guessing. And moving from department to department. Oh, you got to do this next, or oh, you came to the wrong department, you've got to go here first.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because he said that he had to make 30 different trips up to Concord.
Oh my gosh.
Because they kept calling him up, oh, you got to do this. Oh, you got to do this.
We heard that from Representative Sanborn when she was on our show, that she has a small business, and the regulations kill you. And then licensing, that's another one in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has the highest amount of licensing for all professions than any other state in the country.
Right.
Wow. So that's
even, I mean, you look at the licensing for the casinos, you know, Maggie Hassan wanted, what, 88 million for it?
Yeah.
And that's one of the other reasons that really bothered me with Bill. You get this high one-time payment, and then we only get 35% of the revenue. I'd rather have a smaller upfront license fee, but get a lot more in the back.
Yeah, but if that goes away, then you got less in the long run.
That's true. But but to give somebody a license to spend $80 million one time.
Yeah, I think she was trying to plug certain holes with
certain holes in the budget, and
instead of trying to work through them.
Yeah, and the Senate ended up coming up with a budget that worked.
Based on, by the way, Bill O'Brien's budget.
Yeah. So why don't you give us an example of maybe something that you've worked in the House across party lines to get things done? I think that all in all, New Hampshire's done a decent job working together to get, you know, a budget done and whatnot. Well, we have to by law, but is there a time where you've felt that you've worked on the other side of the aisle and to get something done?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when I was working on the in the election law, we had a really good, we worked really well together, a bipartisan. Actually, election law is a really good bipartisan group, but this particular, it was the voter ID bill that we worked on in 2011. And we had really good input from a couple of the Democrats and we got a nice amendment together. Yeah. Of course, they killed it. They wanted. Oh, yeah. they killed it, but we actually got input from everyone. We all liked it, and then it came to committee, and they wanted it completely partisan. So.
Oh boy.
I know that was a hot contested thing, the voter ID. I know here in Derry, being at the polls, we're there all day long when the election's on, and people were happy to produce ID. They were happy, or had the perception that there would be no cheating. So, even though over 4,000, there's 4,000 cases of cards coming back with addressee unknown that they don't tell us about, what we know about.
Well, it's interesting because the year that we passed it, and was 2012, or it took effect, they never, the students and the New Hampshire ACLU or New Hampshire CLU never fought the ID bill, but they fought the domestication or domestic bill.
Oh, right, right.
So, and at the time I'm thinking, this is kind of odd. And sure enough, they were able to get through the ID portion, but it was the registration piece that they fought and they got Judge Lewis to claim it's unconstitutional, which now it's in front of, I think, the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
That's what they were more concerned about, because they knew it was going to adversely affect the students or the people coming over the borders.
Right, right. Here's one of the things that I heard and that I have trouble with. College student that's at UNH, let's say he's from New York. I was told that they had reached out to this person and said, don't ask for an absentee ballot from New York because you know that New York's going to vote a certain way. Instead, vote here in New Hampshire because you can. New Hampshire's a swing state, so why don't you vote here in New Hampshire? The problem
we can make more of an impact.
Right. The problem I have with that is that he doesn't have any vested, he's not really paying taxes here.
Right.
He's not
So he's making
registering his car
decisions
here?
that are based on that have ramifications for the taxpayers.
Right.
I just don't know how you get around that, because if he is legally domiciled, because he's going to school in UNH, you can't
Shouldn't he
prevent
be
him.
registering his car here and paying the taxes on it?
Well,
If he's domiciled.
Well, exactly, and there were a couple of bills that we tried to work through, and they got killed too. But it would require anyone. One of the things that Senator Prescott tried to do is standardize residency, and so that if you claim residency in New Hampshire, then you have to do everything that a resident would have to do. You'd have to register your car. You have to, pay in the taxes.
Right.
And obviously they fought that, and they won. But these are things that we can try and work on and get through.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy the election law piece of it, and I know Senator Prescott, at least now, is in that particular area at the Senate, and I want to kind of work with him on that as well.
Another big thing on that particular bill was on the election law with the students voting was that New Hampshire had several constitutional amendments on their ballot this last presidential election, and these students that came from wherever were voting on our Constitution, even though they have no vested interest in New Hampshire at all, other than the fact that they're going to school here.
Right. Well, in 2008, in 2010, when I got in and was on the election law, David Pierce was there. David Pierce is the one that got the rules changed in 2008. Prior to that, it was much more stringent to allow students to vote. And he changed it in 2008, which was a presidential year.
Right.
And that's what the bill was that we tried to pass in 2012, was bringing it back to the 2008. And Judge Lewis said, well, it's unconstitutional. And then the Secretary of State actually came in and said, wait a minute, it's not unconstitutional. We've been practicing this from 2008. And that's when the Supreme Court said, uh-oh, Judge Lewis, take it back and look at it again.
Wow.
So.
Well, that's interesting. Stay tuned. I mean, because it's not a presidential election year this time around, which typically that's when you see a lot of this happening.
Right.
But
So it's going to be an interesting year for us up there. And being in the Senate, you'll have a much more, I think the ratio was 19-1 senators to House members.
18 or 19-1, yeah.
So you'll have a lot more pull. And
a lot more lobbyists.
Well, see,
I'm seeing that.
And this is where I'm getting at is, somebody like myself that has put in a few bills, and then they'll pass the House, which I thought was the hard part. And they get like I had one bill that passed 19-0 in the House, in the committee. Then the consent calendar got passed, goes to the Senate, dies 5-0.
Well, that's why I think we, if I am the senator, I want to make sure that I keep in touch with all of the state reps from each area, because I want to know what's going on and what you guys are interested in. And getting passed, and talk about it, and so I can listen and see what's important to you, and just like what's important to our constituents. I want to be an active part with the state reps, because I think that's something that has disturbed me, that as state reps, and the state reps were just kind of cut off. But I want that avenue of dialect open to talk to you guys and my state reps in Hampstead. And
Well, it's certainly nice that you serve 2 terms in the House. It gives you a greater appreciation of what's done there.
and the frustration that we have.
Yeah, and so that makes sense, and I'm happy to hear that you said you want to do that if you're elected.
Yeah.
We're going to be running out of time shortly, so I want to give you every opportunity to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself. Maybe you've got a website that they can go to, and
I do.
Great, and maybe how to learn more about you.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for having me here.
You're welcome.
And I just want to say that I want to continue being a part of the community. Listen to what my constituents say. Listen to what the state reps say that are in my district, and work with them on a continuous basis. And I ask for your vote. My website is www.regina4fornh.com.
Great.
Okay, this concludes this episode of the Legislators Lounge. You can find us on the web at derrylounge.com. We're also on Facebook. You can search Legislators Lounge on Facebook and find us. We're also on YouTube. You can watch this and all our previous episodes on YouTube by searching it. And that, once again, just go to YouTube and search Legislators Lounge. Until the next time, this is Jim Webb and Brian Chericello for the Legislators Lounge.